UPM mengumumkan yuran pendaftaran Universiti Awam dihadkan tak lebih daripada RM1,500.
Kes kemasukan ke hospital meningkat 2 kali ganda akibat jerbu.
Dan difahamkan sekurang-kurangnya 8 wartawan terbunuh dan 2 lagi hilang dalam serangan udara Israel ke atas Gaza.
Terokai keindahan pulau, tarikan pelancongan dan kehidupan penduduk setempat dalam island checkpoints yang dibawakan khas oleh Tourism Malaysia.
Ada kick dia. Jom kita pergi tengok. Dia main turun je, tak cila kan? Macam-macam lagi lah. Bau dia.
Ni bubuk kunyit, boyak garam.
Experience yang baru, kami memang cantik.
Setiap Sabtu, 8.30 malam di semua platform Astro AWANI.
Good evening. You are tuning in to AWANI Tonight with me, Cynthia Ng. Technology giants such as Google, Microsoft, TikTok and Innovix Corporation have pledged for greater investments in Malaysia, says Datuk Seri Anwar Ibrahim. The Prime Minister held a meeting with executives of the companies on the sideline of his visit to San Francisco in the US for the APEC 2023 summit.
Dalam pertemuan ini yang akan disusuli oleh Menteri Tengku Zafrul ialah keyakinan mereka kepada Malaysia kerana pada hemat mereka sistem politik stabil dan dasar jelas dan kelihatan ada keupayaan kita untuk mempercepatkan proses kelulusan yang akan memberikan keyakinan kepada pelabur.
Astro AWANI team is on the ground to bring exclusive coverages of APEC 2023. Our editor-in-chief, Ashra Ismail, sees the opportunity to engage with a group of young leaders who have compelling messages for the global leaders attending the conference.
Okay, now guys, thank you so much for being with me. We would like to send a message across to all APEC leaders this week.
And we have one thing we want to say that I'd like to communicate at least to the APEC Secretariat and the committee and the people coming all around the world here at San Francisco, that we, the Intergenerational Justice Coalition, young people all over the world, are mobilizing, are organizing, and we deserve a seat at the table. We're working to address sustainability, to address climate change, and to address workers' rights, labor rights, and trade, not just free trade, but equitable trade all over the world. And we want to work with you to make this world a better place, not just for us, not just for you, but for all the generations that are to come.
I think my message to leaders is to consider opportunity in avenues they've never considered before. I think a lot of what we spoke about is the underrepresented, and I think there's just so much out there that they have never thought about because they've never, again, like Mo said, had a seat at the table before, and to consider that when moving forward with future plans and projects.
And I really think that APEC should put an emphasis on that to provide us with that seat at the table and to take our perspective on not only just on addressing climate change but on working through a just transition that includes the most marginalized people, especially youth who are 6-fold times more likely to be negatively impacted by climate change, and they make up 60% of the Asia-Pacific region, and also they are the demographics that have the biggest growth in the future, population growth in the future. So the main core message here is to ensure that intergenerational young people like us get a seat at the table.
And as young leaders and as individuals that are in industry as well as that want to contribute to this globalization in this APEC region in specific, just an amazing opportunity here in San Francisco and APEC 2023. So we're just having an amazing time, and we really just kind of echoing what Mo said, really with what we're looking for with the AMF is really to get access to further have these conversations and open up these conversations to more diverse groups to really get, new voices inside these rooms to actually communicate what people are saying on the ground. And that's what you're seeing here today.
What I want to say to the APEC Secretariat and Committee and the world at large really is that youth are mobilizing across the globe to create action and conversations that are driving change. So what the APEC Secretariat needs to do is reach their hand across the aisle and work with youth across the world to make sure that our voices are being heard and that change is being made with everyone in the conversation.
We just want to sit at the table. There are so many different opinions that go through all these big conversations of a just transition, what does moving towards clean energy look like and what happens to the marginalized communities that are more affected. But, for just us to have an opinion in the room and to provide a new perspective, being, one of the generations that will be dealing with this more than some of the ones that are making the decision, we just want to connect the gaps and work with you to, help move us in the right direction.
U.S. President Joe Biden and his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping have agreed to resume military communications following a rare meeting in California. Biden said both countries are back to direct, open and clear communications, marking an important progress in U.S.-China relations, which had descended to their lowest point in decades.
Biden and Xi met for about 4 hours on the outskirts of San Francisco, on the sidelines of the APEC conference. It was the first time the two leaders had spoken in person in more than a year. China severed military-to-military communications last year, after then U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Taiwan. Besides resuming military talks, the two presidents also agreed to set up a counter-narcotics working group to tackle fentanyl pouring into the U.S., which has contributed to a rise in overdose deaths in the country. Separately, Xi at a reception dinner with top American corporate executives said that China is ready to be a partner and friend of the U.S., as Beijing looks to reassure global business and counter his country's struggles to entice foreign investment. In his speech, Xi said the world needs the two countries to work together, and it is wrong to view China as a threat and play a zero-sum game against it.
The Transport Ministry, through the Malaysian Aviation Commission, MAVCOM, is devising a key performance indicator, KPI, to ensure domestic airlines meet and exceed their on-time performance targets. Its Minister Anthony Loke said the KPI is expected to be completed by the first quarter of 2024.
Berkaitan pencapaian ketepatan waktu ataupun on-time performance, bagi penerbangan domestik, syarikat-syarikat penerbangan Malaysia telah merekodkan pencapaian 79% untuk suku ketiga 2023 berbanding 82% pada suku kedua 2023.
An airline's on-time performance is measured by an aircraft's arrival at the gate within 15 minutes of the scheduled time. SKS Airways recorded the highest on-time performance for domestic flights at 95%, followed by Mars Wings at 93%, Batik Air Malaysia at 82% and Firefly at 77%. While Malaysia Airlines and AirAsia were ranked the lowest on flight punctuality at 74%. Loke said MAVCOM is also looking to set the percentage of flight cancellations for airline operators in the country. Appropriate action would be taken if domestic airlines fail to comply with the Malaysian Aviation Consumer Protection Code 2016 (MACPC), which regulates flight cancellations, refunds and delays.
Any proposal to raise the ceiling price of local white rice will be fair to all parties. The Agriculture and Food Security Minister, Datuk Sri Muhammad Sabu, said accepting the proposal would require comprehensive discussion about the impact on people and rice producers.
Muhammad said discussions are ongoing and that a decision will be made only after consulting several ministries, namely the Economy Ministry, Finance Ministry and the Domestic Trade and Cost of Living Ministry, as well as MPs, especially those from rice-growing areas. He said the current price of 26 ringgit per 10 kg has not been changed since 2008. Though in recent months there have been calls for the government to increase the ceiling price of local white rice to overcome a supply shortage. To address the issue, Mohammed said the government is also looking to establish a national stockpile of at least 500,000 bags of certified rice seeds.
We'll go for a quick break. Stay tuned for more.
PM mengumumkan yuran pendaftaran universiti awam dihadkan tak lebih daripada RM1,500.
Kes kemasukan ke hospital meningkat 2 kali ganda akibat jerebu.
Dan difahamkan sekurang-kurangnya 8 wartawan terbunuh dan 2 lagi hilang dalam serangan udara Israel ke atas Gaza.
Israeli forces today continued their search of Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital, where thousands of people are sheltering. The IDF claimed to have found Hamas's operations center in the hospital and released pictures of what it said were Hamas weapons and equipment. Hamas had denied the claim, saying it was Israeli propaganda to justify the destruction of Gaza's health sector. Meanwhile, Israel claimed that its fighter jets had struck the residence of Hamas leader Ismail Haniyeh. Haniyeh is believed to be living in Qatar. Israel says the house was used as a Hamas meeting place. Separately, the UN Security Council has passed a resolution calling for an extended humanitarian pause throughout the Gaza Strip to allow for aid delivery and medical evacuations after 4 failed attempts to respond to the Israel-Hamas war. It also called for the unconditional release of prisoners held in Gaza. Separately, U.S. President Joe Biden said he was doing everything in his power to free hostages held by Hamas in Gaza, but that did not mean sending in the U.S. military. Speaking to reporters, he also said he had made it clear to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu that occupying Gaza would be a big mistake and that a two-state solution is the ultimate answer.
I'm not a fortune teller. I can't tell you how long it's going to last. But I can tell you I don't think it ultimately ends until there's a two-state solution. I made it clear to the Israelis I think it's a big mistake for them to think they're going to occupy Gaza and maintain Gaza. I don't think that works.
The outcome of a joint summit of the Arab League and Organization of Islamic Cooperation (OIC) in Saudi Arabia last week highlighted regional divisions over responses to the Israel-Hamas war. Dr. Feroz Ali from Asia Middle East Center for Research and Dialogue weighs in on the reasons for the division and the economic perspective of the war.
Ever since the signing of Abraham Accord in 2020, there are at least 2 Arab states that have started to exchange trade with Israel. And one of the country is UAE. And when we actually dissect through the data, we can actually see that, the balance of trade is tilted to the favor of UAE. In 2021, UAE exported at least 980 million USD to Israel, as opposed to Israel that only exported about 342 million USD. So you can see the positive exchange of balance that favors UAE in this sense. Now, Saudi Arabia and Bahrain, they are observing this form of development, and they want to get a piece of cake from this overall trade with Israel as well. So that is the reason why Saudi Arabia, what we call that, and also UAE and Bahrain, they are not really enthusiastic to cut off diplomatic relations with Israel. With the exception of Saudi Arabia, even though they don't have a diplomatic relation with Israel, but they support that with hope in the future they want to open up diplomatic relations with Israel.
During the meeting on Saturday, some Arab countries led by Algeria called for a complete cut in diplomatic ties with Israel, while other Arab countries that have established diplomatic relations with Israel pushed back, stressing the need to keep channels open with Benjamin Netanyahu's government.
From an economic perspective, let us look like this. Even though they need to project a strong political message towards Israel, they are also facing some form of pressure not to overly do it. Because if they are being too harsh, too robust on Israel, there is a likelihood that any opportunity that could likely exist for them to establish diplomatic relations with Israel will be closed. Remember, Israel is a wealthy country and it has a lot of economic advantage there for Arab countries to explore. So they want to expand or diversify the economy, and one way of doing it is to get into the Israel economy.
That wraps up AWANI Tonight. I'm Cynthia Ng. Thank you for watching and good night.
Daulat Tuanku.